The Rodecaster Video is essentially the Rodecaster Duo mixed with an Atem Mini Pro ISO, but with even more customization and features. It does have 2 combo XLR 1/4-inch jacks and 4 HDMI inputs that max out at 1080p 60 frames per second. And yeah, I probably lost some of you because it does max out at 1080p. However, I really would urge you to listen to everything that this is capable of before you decide that the lack of 4K is a deal breaker for you. But I could understand you not wanting to spend $1,200 on a 1080p device, but it does do a lot. Now, this video is going to take a little bit different turn than my other videos, and it's just purely because the RCV, the Rodecaster Video, is just capable of so much that it's hard to cover absolutely everything. So I will take you through the physical ins and outs and the buttons of the Rodecaster Video, but then I will just show you a condensed tutorial of how I set up the RCV. Now, just so you know, I am shooting with Sony cameras, and I did just switch from log to PP off. It's a bad name. It's a real bad name. But that is because I'm recording in the camera and the RCV is recording also. And I just wanted to compare the colors and everything, see if there is a color shift, anything like that. And also just to compare the internal Sony 4K recording versus the 1080p recording of the RCV. Now, speaking of the features and specs, let's go through some of the connectivity of the RCV. First, on the back, we have 2 optional antennas that work with wireless Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Then we have 2 combo XLR 1/4-inch jacks. Following that, we have a left and right output for monitors or speakers, and then 2 1/4-inch headphone jacks. Then we have 2 HDMI outputs followed by 4 HDMI inputs. And then we have 5 USB-C connections. The first 2 are so you can connect a computer or other device. The third one is so you can connect a hard drive for storage. And the last 2 are able to connect Røde USB microphones and webcams, and a bunch of other stuff. I'll talk about that in a bit. Then we have an Ethernet port and an SD card slot so you can transfer files onto the RCV. Then we just have a USB-C for power, and it does come with a power adapter next to the power button. Now let's just briefly cover the front or the top of the Rodecaster Video. On the top left, we have a record and go live button followed by 2 indicator lights. The top one does show you that you do have storage like the USB-C 3, and the bottom one will be tied to the streaming profiles for you to go live. Then underneath that, we have the A through G section, and these are all kind of intertwined with the buttons on the right, the media button, the layers button, and the PIP button. But then underneath the PIP button is the keying option, which you would enable that if you're going to use a green screen. Each of those buttons will toggle between different modes, but also you can just have A through G in scenes, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Then the buttons 1 through 6 are just your inputs, the 4 being HDMI and the 2 being those optional USB-Cs, and then a fade to black button. And additionally, we do have a little screen on the RCV to control a vast majority of settings, which is great, then a little toggle wheel to change some of the settings. Next to the control dial toggle wheel is the headphone and monitor control. That's where you can adjust the volume for your headphone 1, 2, and outputs, and to get to those different modes, you would just press the button. And last are the 3 buttons on the left. The I button is an inspection button, and if you press that, you can go ahead and select whatever scene or input you want without the audience seeing it. And then the auto button is to control auto switching, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then there is the standard cut button, which just allows you to flip between different inputs and scenes. Now, when it comes to the build quality on the $1,200 Rodecaster, I've got to tell you, it is built so well. When you first pick this up, it's kind of shocking how heavy it is, which is kind of similar to the Atem Mini Pro. It's like heavier than you'd think, but this is like way heavier than you'd think. Additionally, the fact that this is VESA mount compatible is so cool. I opted for the Røde VESA mount, which honestly is $50, but it is worth it. It is great. There are some cheaper options though that I'll link down below. Now from this point forward, everything will be shot on the RCV, even if there's some B-roll that looks like maybe it wasn't from the RCV, I promise it was. But at this point, I'm just going to show you how I set the RCV up, which should be a pretty good tutorial in itself and should go through a vast majority of things. Now, currently the microphone that I'm using is the Røde M2, which is a handheld condenser mic, and it is going into the combo jack 1, and I do have the second one plugged in, and it's going to the NTG3 right over here, which is just for fun because I had 2 inputs. I do have some other microphones plugged in right now, but I'll show them to you in a little bit. Next are the monitor outputs left and right. I have been sending those to the Yamaha HS5s, but I have noticed something a little bit weird with the monitor outputs and the headphone jack is they're actually out of sync, but I would assume that could be fixed in a firmware update. Next, the headphones that I'm actually monitoring with, and then the HDMI out, which is going to an Atomos Ninja 5, and then the green cable, which is going to a 17-inch little monitor display, I believe. Then I have the purple cable, which is this camera, the blue one, which is this camera, and then the orange one, and it's this camera, the overhead. And then the little black cable, which is much smaller than the Rode cables, is actually just plugged into my MacBook. And then angle 5, a beautiful one in my opinion, and that is actually running into the USB-C 4. And the way that I'm grabbing that is actually with an Elgato capture card to the USB-C 4. And that is one thing about the 4 and 5 is not only can they take USB mics and webcams like I said earlier, but they also can take capture cards and Sony cameras and all sorts of stuff. From my understanding, anything that is UVC compatible will work in those. Then I have the USB-C 1 plugged into my computer. I don't have the second one plugged in, but I am using the USB-C 3. And I'm actually using that with a USB-C to SATA cable, so it is going into a solid-state hard drive. Then I, of course, have the Ethernet, the SD card, and the power. And this cable right here is doing something very cool. Through the USB-C 4 and 5, as I mentioned, you can plug in USB mics. However, you can also plug in other Rode devices, like a Rodecaster, maybe a Rodecaster Duo. That's exactly what I have plugged in. So this microphone, the Rode Procaster, is currently plugged in to the Duo through XLR, and it does have the Procaster processing enabled on it. And hopefully that processing sounds good because I didn't check it beforehand. So if you have a Rodecaster Pro 2 or a Duo, and you look at the Rodecaster video and you're like, it kind of makes my other one obsolete. Maybe not though, because you could just combine them. So that's cool too. But I think I am going to switch over to the Procaster because I've used the M2 quite a bit in this video. So let's switch it. But let's talk about what settings I changed in the Rodecaster video to get it to work for me. But let's say you want to go in and mess with the audio settings in the RCV. You'd press that bottom right button, and then you'd go over to whatever microphone you have. And currently, I'm just using the shotgun mic and the audio from the USB 5. And since this is an audio-related channel, one thing I do want to touch on really quick is the DSP, the affix processing that you can achieve in the Rodecaster Duo, in the Rodecaster Pro, and in the RCV. I mean, it is awesome that you can do that. You can even process the audio coming in from a guest. That is so cool. One of the limitations with it is when you click on the processing, you really only get that sparkle depth and punch option to alter in the actual RCV. If you want the advanced settings, you're going to need to go into your computer and alter those in Rode Central, which is understandable. And I get not being able to mess with everything on that small little screen. So with the XLR options, these are the ones that I was talking about, the sparkle, depth, and punch. And you can go in and edit those and adjust them with the little dial and just get it exactly however you want it. But then in the audio settings option is where you will adjust your gain, turn on phantom power, link channels, stuff like that. But actually I did go back to the M2 as well as the PodMic USB just because I think it's so impressive that it actually recognizes that the PodMic USB is in fact plugged in. And it just goes to show that you can't use USB-C 4 and 5 or any of the USB-Cs for that matter for a different microphone brand. It will not work. I've tried it. I really have. But if I wanted to go into the Combo 1 jack, which is the XLR1, I can go from a high-pass filter to a de-esser, to a noise gate, to a compressor, to a 3-band EQ, to an exciter, or I can pan left and right or just leave it centered. However, if you are plugged in through USB, then you will get whatever standard options come with the USB connection of that device. So for the Rode PodMic USB, you'll have a high-pass filter option at 60 Hz. You'll have a noise gate, a compressor, and an exciter. And these plug-in options and settings do work very similar to Rode Unify and Rode Connect. Up here you have the live mix, and you also have what's going to go to the recording. If I wanted to customize that, I could, and just choose the combo 1, combo 2, the sounds, or just whatever I wanted. And yeah, it's just insanely customizable that way. It's awesome. But since we're talking about audio, one thing I do want to mention that you can do is if you go to the media section and you put a song or a sound effect on one of the pads, I'll just play this really quick and you'll see on the screen that it goes to sounds. But aside from sounds and video clips, if you do add video clips, it will just automatically go to the video clips track. But you do have Bluetooth and you have wireless. Currently, I do have the transmitter for the Rode Wireless Go 2. I don't need a receiver for it. But any Rode Wireless Series 4 will work with this. So the Pro, the Me, and the 2 will work with this just fine. But if we go to the wireless 1 track, we'll be able to set this up lickety-split. Let's just go to the settings option. And then I'm going to turn this on, tap to pair. Okay, it was faster than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, it's already set up. It's that quick. So I did the tap to pair option, but since I paired this with it once before, this is literally the second time I've ever done it. But regardless, it is just very easy to set the wireless up for this. And when it comes to syncing your audio with your video, it's just effortless because it's all in one place. But if you do find that your lips are a little bit off from the sound, you can go to these settings and then you'll just right click over to audio delay and you're in business. But one of the very cool things about this is that you can click on frames, you can do frames if you want, but if you click on the frames, it will actually show you the millisecond time, which can be a bit more precise, but a bit more confusing also. But then the only other thing that I will mention about audio is that you can do multi-track and you can also do a live mix, obviously, which in this setting, I am doing multi-track since I have multiple sound sources. But in a live stream setting, I would just use the live mix and then I would mute whatever inputs I wasn't using at a certain time. But now on the screen, I'm just going to rapid fire go through the device configuration area. I know some people won't care about it, but there's the HDMI A and B. You can do program or multi-view. You can choose your frame rate, which is absolutely very important. It can go from 23.98 up to 60 frames per second. You can choose the switching mode, whether you want it to be instant or studio. And then I would say this is one of the most important settings and one of the biggest deals that this device can do this. ISO recording. Yes, the RCV can do it. It will isolate all the video tracks, record them separately, and for that matter, all the audio tracks, and also it will give you a default recording. But the fact that this does have ISO is just huge. And then in the audio section, you have the headphones, the Rode headphones, high sensitivity, low sensitivity. Then the monitor, there's just a fixed output option. Then the HDMI option if you want it off or in the live mix. Then we got the brightness setting. Then we got some more sensitive settings that I won't go through, but you got your network, date and time, Bluetooth, info. And then stream profiles is like your YouTube channel, your Discord. It's all the information like the servers and everything. That is one thing about the streaming profiles is I think that you have to set that up in Rode Central. And then one additional thing that you will have to set up in Rode Central is auto switching. Now, the easiest way for me to put this is if you have multiple people on a podcast, and sometimes the host is yelling at the guest and then they're back and forth. Well, if you don't want to manually switch that, you could auto switch it. And that is simply by setting up the camera angle and the microphone and the priorities that go along with them. So if you have a camera on the host, a tight shot, then you have a camera on the guest, a tight shot, you can set the angle with the host and their microphone as the highest priority, and then set the guest and their microphone as mid, and then the two of them as low priority. Now, one thing I do want to make clear, and I did make this mistake once before, is if you are going to enable auto, you're going to want to hold the auto button down until it turns blue. If you just short press it and it's green, it's not going to do the auto switching. So for instance, I have the camera 1 angle on this microphone. Then I have the camera 2 angle on the podcast USB, and then a tighter angle of my face I have is the shotgun microphone. Then when I have the theme song play, it mutes everything else. So let's give this a try. Why not? Well, it definitely works because I have both of these microphones muted right now. And as soon as I started talking, it grabbed the shotgun microphone, which this is the right scene for this mic. Now let's see if it does the other one. Oh my gosh, yep, it did it. Wow, this actually works surprisingly well. The only thing I worry about is just microphone bleed. I don't know how much that would come into play, but I would assume if you have a decently directional microphone, it would be fine. And last but definitely not least is the main shot with the Rode M2, and it did do it. Wow, I really do like the auto switching. I didn't think I was going to like it this much. I'm very entertained by it. But that is one thing that is very cool is you can press this I button. You can go and click on all of this and just inspect everything. But then you're actually just here the whole time during the live stream. So it just kind of separates that. It's nice. Oh yeah, but there is a fade to black option. Cool. Now I'm going to take you through the scenes, the overlay, the PIP, and the keying. We're going to talk about that a little bit. First thing, we're just going to get it out of the way. I'm sorry, I don't use it, but it's the keying option. It works with green and blue screens. I don't have either of those. I could turn the lights green. Did I try doing that? Yes, I did. And it worked fine. It was okay, but not great, but that was my bad, not the RCV. Now there is PIP, picture in picture, not to be confused with PIMP, which is very understandable confusion. So in the PIP section, you have plenty of options to go through. You would just select whatever angle you want to be camera B. Then you would just select whatever background you want, or if you don't want a background or anything like that. But then once you're done, you can hold an empty scene that you want to save. So for instance, let's save scene E, because that one was free, E. But one thing to mention, which is pretty obvious, but it is so much easier to create scenes and everything in the computer on Rode Central. So let's go to Scene Builder and we'll build a scene together. Now I have created some other scenes like A, B, C, which is just the tight version of this angle. So I could be like, hey, listen up. Because I'm serious now. And then there is scene D, which is essentially just a tighter version without a background of this. But then there is scene F. And this is really cool because you can actually play a video file and have the camera be on top of it. Yeah, I'm not shooting this right now, just so you know. I'm not shooting the back of the Rodecaster. That was previously. Wild, right? But additionally, I just created like an intro, outro scene. But now we would just click on scene E and I would choose between template and custom. I'll just show you the templates really quick. Essentially, there are most of the options that I would choose, but we'll just go with custom scene anyway. But getting the things in the media library is very easy. I just, added media and that was about it. Nothing really to talk about there. But now we have a background and we have one camera. And I do think that 5 is the limit. But one thing I did learn with the punch in and stuff is that you kind of have to massage things into position. So for instance, I could cut the sides off of this and everything. And, essentially what I did in that situation was I cut a little bit off of every side and then I just sized it up and that was the punched in version. But for this, I'm thinking edges in just a little bit, just get rid of the edging. Then I'm just going to go in and add a different camera angle. I'm going to go with camera angle 5. And since a lot of that information is just the screen, I'm just going to have it be the screen pretty much. And essentially this little button just allows you to move the angle around within the frame that you picked. So I'll just go with something like that. Then of course I'm going to have a vast majority of the real estate of this shot be of the Rodecaster top down. But I'll just go with something like that. And then of course I will add the computer screen, which is going to do the infinity thing. And then I will just crop that in there, which this is very weird looking. But then in this shot, I would just get rid of anything that doesn't actually apply to this. And this is a weird scene. I just realized how weird this is. But maybe if we have these go more toward the center of those, I think I like that less. I don't know, but you get the gist of it. But then you can add borders, of course, and you can choose them to be, I believe, up to 100. Let's see what 100 looks like. Why not? Okay, that is awful. Let's go with something like 5. Why not? But then here you go. Here's the beautiful magic that we created together. Look at that. Hey, it's practical. It makes sense, I think, but it's not pretty. But that is essentially it for this setup. Now for my review section, it's more of a suggestion section and like a who is this for section. Now the biggest question I think is who is this for? And in my opinion, it's for anyone who currently has an Atem or maybe did have an Atem that wants better audio quality and wants more customization. Now, if you're starting out and you have anywhere from 2 to 4 members on a podcast, 4 because of those USB-C inputs, but then again, you could add the Rodecaster Pro 2 or the Duo. So anywhere from 2 to 7 you could make work, but then you'd have to buy a Rodecaster. But if you are starting out and you have a podcast and you want to have multiple angles, this is great. This is a great option for you. And as much as I do hate to say this, but if you know this is for you, it's for you. Like, that sounds like such a big cop-out. But if you're on the fence about it and you're like, well, maybe it'll be an upgrade, I don't know, don't get it. You know, if it's not a clear-cut upgrade for you, don't get it. And that's not to say it isn't awesome. It is awesome, and I really plan to use the hell out of it. And I mean, when it comes to the footprint of it, it's really not that much bigger than an Atem. I mean, yeah, we're talking like 1.5 times the size, but it's not massive. And I would say that the Rodecaster Pro 2 is bigger. The original Rodecaster is bigger. You gotta have those big old pads for us dumb audio people, you know? But that is the thing about the RCV is it is essentially a Rodecaster Duo with a switcher. And I mean, yeah, you don't have physical faders, but you do have virtual ones. Now, when it comes to the usability of the RCV, it is really solid. But I would say you really do need a computer, in my opinion, to get it set up and everything. And I know what you're saying. Hey, it's a switcher. We're probably going to use a computer anyway, buddy. Yeah, probably. But you can do a lot of things with the screen. A lot. But just not everything. Especially the things that are important to me, like the advanced audio section. But to go a little bit negative for just a quick second, I would say my least favorite part of the RCV is very fixable in firmware. It's the delay on the left and right monitor outputs compared to the headphones. When I edit videos, I usually listen through my monitors, and there was enough of a delay to prevent me from doing that. The headphone amps are fantastic. Everything really is good. It's just the delay between the monitors and the headphones. But the other thing that I will say that is slight negative is the lack of 4K. But I've got to tell you, I love 1080p again. I didn't think I would, but I do. I love it. Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer, and I think that people will see the $1,200 price tag and they'll think 1080p, what the hell was Rode thinking? But honestly, with everything that this gives you, I think that $1,200 is a good deal, which is a little crazy when the Atem Mini Pro ISO is $500, but the lack of good audio quality in there, and I would make the argument that the Rode software is better, and you can get way more physical you can get way more physical with this thing. It won't even stop you. You have more physical inputs and outputs compared to the Atem. All of those additions for $700, I think, is a good deal. That's the price of the Rodecaster Pro 2. The RCV is just a high-powered device that honestly, I think is great. And I initially didn't plan on giving it a BB-SAR rating in this video, but I think I kind of will. Just tentatively, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I really think it is just super solid. It drops down a point because of the monitor delay, which I think will be fixed in firmware, and the lack of 4K. But my suggestions to Rode for a firmware update would just be to fix the monitoring system. Maybe add some different shapes so we can crop video like a circle or just even like a soft little rectangle, you know, with the soft edges. And having LUT support would be very cool, or at least some way to manage your live colors. And additionally, if we could make the video bigger outside of the 1080p frame, that could help, especially for punch-ins like this. It'd just be one click rather than like 7. which now that I'm thinking about it, it seems pretty small. So just keep doing what you're doing, make some firmware updates. You're doing good. But thank you all for watching this video on the RCV. Thank you to Røde for sending this product out for me to check out. And the biggest thank you goes to all the members of the audio hotline. I'll see you audio nerds next time.